Hey, how you doing? Live from the streets of Kansas City. Yes, we are actually in Kansas City. Temperature now is 34 degrees Fahrenheit. And the sun is trying to come out. Probably the first time last Friday the sun was out. And my mission today is to take this car in and have it worked on. There's nothing wrong with it. Oil change. This car is still under warranty. We bought it when we got children. We had an Insta family, and we were looking for something with all-wheel drive and captain's chairs in the back. The captain's chairs are kind of indispensable when you have kids that can't leave each other alone. You put the kids too close together, they can't keep their hands to themselves. Anyway, let me flip this around so you don't look at my ugly mug. Oops. There we go. A friend of mine posted an article in response to what we've been talking about, and I haven't been able to read it, but it says, and it's no surprise. It's saying that, it's from NPR, I remember that, saying that Republicans are leaving the party left and right over the Capitol incident, the insurrection, and that's really no surprise, because a lot of Republicans are Republicans, and you know, there's a split in the party right now, and one of my past discussions, I'm interested in a split in the party, because in the Civil War to free slaves, it was preceded by several things, and one of them was a split in the Democratic Party, to where there were two conventions and two different candidates, a southern candidate and a northern one, and that's one of the reasons why Abraham Lincoln won in a landslide, because he was up against a split ticket. And right now, I think Republican unity is at stake, and Republicans are, they should be worried, not for their party, but for their country. But unfortunately, as of late, party and country have become interchangeable terms for some people. And so, now we're talking about people putting their party and their ideology above everything else. And, you know, what I talked about this morning is it's leading to some people actually turning into what Adolf Hitler referred to as a fifth column. You know, you have your military columns, and Navy, Air Force, Army, I guess you could say Coast Guard or Marines. And then the fifth column would be the one that opens the door and lets in the Trojan horse. And our Trojan horse is a resurgent Russian empire that wants to be a superpower. And in order to be a superpower, they must weaken their rivals. And one way to do that is by taking advantage of internal weaknesses within a country, such as race relations and things like that. And to create and sow division. And they've been learning from the best. They've been learning from, of all things, the Republican Party. And the Republican Party has been doing that to get their candidates elected. Let's divide the public, because, you know, after all, people, working class people are more apt to support their, unfortunately, and it doesn't bode. It isn't a good thought to have about human nature. But people will embrace their prejudices over their own opportunities and their future and their kids' future. And that's why you see some areas of the country, they never seem to advance. They never get ahead. It's because in these parts of the country where you see that, you also notice that they don't tend to be very enlightened when it comes to civil rights. And nowadays, most people just kind of pretend, but actions speak louder than words. And people pretend that they're not racist and they don't know what you're talking about. But look at what they do. And that speaks much louder than what they say. We love this hill. Every time we go over that hill, our youngest kid says, "It scares my butt." And of course, I take it pretty fast. I don't hill jump. That's ridiculous. Or hilltop, whatever they call it. But I get the full roller coaster effect in. For the benefit of the kiddos, it's fun. They now know it's coming, and they get all excited when they see it coming and can't contain themselves. But then they're kids. Kids can't contain themselves anyway. Yeah, so it's interesting to me that people are wanting to leave the Republican Party, and it's a pretty reliable source. It's National Public Radio. They're pretty well vetted. I don't know what the percentages are, but what I would worry about are what I call institutional splits. And an institutional split might be like the institutions themselves start dividing themselves and their loyalties. And if you had an institution, we came close in the 2016 election, honestly. We had some activism, I think, going on with the FBI, and I still think that should be looked into. A lot of people say, "Oh, that Comey, he came out, he conveniently politically came out against Hillary, and then he came out against Trump when Trump turned on him." And I say, well, he shouldn't have been coming out against anybody. He should just been doing his job and should know the implications of announcing that you're launching an investigation on a candidate days before the election. And then there were indications that at the time the FBI agents themselves were, a lot of them, depending on which field office, a lot of them were pro-Trump. And I'm sure that if your boss was one way and you were the other, you had to leave. To me, that's an indication of institutional split. Because here you have people who are trained and armed with weaponry and have the power of the federal government behind them, choosing sides. And that's what made the Civil War the second Civil War to free the slaves so bloody, was that institutions split, states split off, and of course they took their armed militias with them, and vast numbers of people who worked for the federal government resigned and went and joined the Confederacy. And by that I mean, I don't know what the percentage is on that. I'd be interested to know what percentage was of the officer corps in the United States Army that quit. Like Robert E. Lee, he didn't want to support the Southern cause. And when Virginia stayed out of the Confederacy, he was fine. He was happy. I'm a Union officer. I'm going to stay in the Union. But then as soon as Fort Sumter was fired upon and Abraham Lincoln mobilized the Union Army, Lee said, "Oh, no. I am loyal to my state. I'm going to fight for my state. You cannot force me to join an army that's going to invade my home." And when Virginia succeeded, he was right there with them. And he joined the Confederacy and became the greatest general of the Confederacy. You know, he was a Mexican-American war vet. Brilliant general, and really made the Civil War much worse, because he took a ragtag army and ran circles around the Union. But you know, you have to understand, people think, well, you know, he was a brilliant strategist and everything, and you really have to understand, in those days, as in many cases even today, if you have to march across open ground to take an enemy position, you are going to take massive losses. And I believe that in the final numbers of all the deaths, the Union deaths outdid the Southern deaths by a small number, but significant. And that's because the Union had to attack the Confederacy and take their fortified positions and take well-defended positions and go against seasoned troops. In the East, where the war was much worse, the armies were much better trained. Out West, the South did horrible. And when they met up with a general who had a grim determination to get the job done and knew what it was going to take and wasn't afraid to do it, but they did not do well at all. General Grant met up against one general, what was his name? Confederate General Johnson, who was in charge of the Battle of Shiloh, and had come up with a brilliant strategy. We're going to do this and that. It was a bit complicated, but they nearly pushed the Union back out at Shiloh Church. Nearly routed the Union Army. But then something happened, as always happens in the fog of war. This general who led from the front, which, you know, many good generals do, was shot in the leg and bled to death. And after that, the Union counterattacked, and everybody just kind of learned for the first time how horrible and bloody the war was going to be. And after that, it was just a matter of determination, and the Union just kept marching south and besieged Vicksburg and held on to it until Vicksburg surrendered and split the South in two. On the day that Vicksburg fell was also the day that the Northern armies defeated General Lee at Gettysburg. What is interesting to me about that too is this shows how the war really went. You know, it seemed like the Union Army was bungling and stumbling around, and the South was running rings around them, and they couldn't do anything, and they couldn't really gain territory, and they give up stuff that they gained, and massive losses with nothing to show for it, yada yada yada, all that. Well, guess what happened at Gettysburg? The South became the bungling army, because I believe it was much harder to fight an offensive war than it was a defensive one. And the advantage in that kind of situation goes to the defender, especially when you had crazy people with these weird ideas of chivalry. No, we got to stand up in lines and march against the position and take the position, and nobody is supposed to dig in because that's cowardly. And like, well, the position you're taking is dug in, and they're firing from behind breastworks and things like that. So why not preserve as many of your troops as you can? Because, replacements aren't that easy to come by. But it was easier for the North than it was for the South. And quite literally, when they ran out of people who wanted to fight for the Northern cause, they would turn to immigrants and say, you can earn your citizenship if you fight for the Union. There were a lot of Irish who died in the Civil War. And actually, there were Irish on both sides. And it was really sad. Anyway, I am almost here to my destination. It's so good to get things, ideas, thoughts off of my chest and be interested to know what other people know. Usually I respond to comments that people make when they watch my videos again, and there are a lot of people watching my videos, if not a lot of people watching them live. So I look at those comments, and oftentimes it gives me fodder for the next topic. But anyway, it's time for my oil change. So thank you. Please like, subscribe, and click that bell so that when I put a new video or whatever, you'll know instantly. So thank you. See ya.